Most people think leadership is about having a perfect plan, but real leadership is what you do when the best option isn't perfect. Today's guest lives in that tension every day between vision and reality, ideals and hard decisions, and why local government truly matters. He's also a new author. His book, Welcome to Monday, came out earlier this year, and it's already guiding people through the weekly grind into intentional living. Well, today we are sitting down with Councillor Chad Krahn of the city of Red Deer. Chad, you're a husband, a father, recently an author of the book, Welcome to Monday. But I'm really interested to hear about how you steward leadership in a way that's going to impact other people's lives. So thank you for joining us, Chad.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
It's going to be great. So Chad, my first question for you is for people that don't see what the importance of municipal government is, what would you say to them? What is the actual importance of city councilors, mayors making decisions within your own city?
So I go back to Red Deer. So Red Deer is this incredible city, but people actually don't believe that. I lived in I grew up in Saskatoon, and then I met my wife, and we lived in Edmonton for a while, and I did school there. And then there's one thing that really struck me about Edmonton is that people love Edmonton, which is strange because it's just a big city where people built stuff, and there's a nice river, and there's all sorts of things there, and they have the Oilers, which factors in. But there's this level of civic pride that people love Edmonton. And then my wife and I moved to Red Deer, and Red Deer is objectively better than Edmonton in every way. And yet people don't have the same love for Red Deer. People don't believe that this is an absolute incredible place to live. And so one of the reasons why I'm involved in municipal politics is this identity piece for Red Deer, that Red Deer is this incredible city, and we need to start believing that. And if we believe that, it will actually grow into that.
So why should people love the city that they're in? Like, I think of Red Deer as an example, but whatever city people are residing in, what makes people want to fall in love with their city?
I think this pulls back to this is actually how cities grow. Cities there's pipes and roads and buildings, all things, but like this is a love of place piece that if you actually want a place to become great, you need to love this place. You need to continue to invest in this place and to let the positive energy, the positive feedback loop to play this out. This is what will actually change a city.
Right. So what brought you to Red Deer? Because I know that you said that you didn't initially reside within this.
So Red Deer is an interesting place. So Red Deer is a place that I felt called to since I was 21. And then when I was 27, my wife and I moved here to actually plant a church. So my background is I have a master's in theology. I'm trained as a pastor, and that's what we moved here to do. And then so we ended up here 11 years ago, almost 12.
And planting a church, like I've tried planting plants. They haven't gone very well. Planting a church is a completely different beast. What did that journey look like of coming here saying we have this vision for people and we want to see them come to God? How did that orchestrate?
So there was a piece of understanding and recognizing that there's lots of disenfranchised people in Red Deer, lots of people that don't know the story of what's going on in the city, don't understand, don't have that level of community and connection that humans need to flourish, that people need to be connected with. And so that's what we came here to do. Turns out it's actually really hard to build something with a bunch of disenfranchised people. And long story short, that didn't come together for us. And we probably don't need to get into that whole story, but that's how we ended up here. And that knowing that people in Red Deer need community, need to understand how to live together and how to do this piece together.
Right.
And so Red Deer is interesting that people have either been here more than 10 years or less than 2.
And so you came here with a dream, and obviously, like you said, that dream didn't take out into fruition of that what you assumed it would look like. How do you then shift to say, okay, this isn't what it was meant to be? How do we move on, but still stay within the city that you feel called to?
Yeah, so that's an interesting piece for us. And for my wife and I, we took a full season to just pray and to figure out, like, what does this look like? We had really clear calling that this is where we're supposed to be, really a city that we fell in love with and that wanted to raise our kids in and wanted to be here and found a way to make that work. And there was seasons where I did whatever work came my way and found a way to continue to be here.
Yes. And so you have this deep love for the city that you're in, which made you move into running for city council. What did that journey look like beforehand? Like, what made that decision to say, hey, I think I have a voice. I think I know what the city needs. How do we move this forward?
So there's an interesting piece of that. I actually come from a really political family.
Okay.
that both my parents were staffers at the legislature in Saskatchewan. And when I was growing up, my mom worked for the MP office. And so politics was always a part of that. And I was the kid who wanted to be a pastor. And so, no, couldn't possibly do politics. And so when we were planting a church, I actually remember saying, oh no, the things you can't do as a pastor is politics and foster care. And that has essentially become my whole life ever since then.
Right.
And so understanding that and not wanting to do this, but then realizing that a lot of my skills translate really well into the political realm, and that at the municipal level is the level of government closest to people and where you can make the most difference in people's lives.
Yeah. It's interesting you saying the childhood of being in a house of politics and then you having this desire to become a pastor, because those are two of the three things that we're taught not to speak about is politics, religion, and then sex. And maybe money, depending on the household that you're in. So what did the family table look like growing up of you have two people in politics and then yourself wanting to move into a pastoral role?
So there's a G.K. Chesterton quote that I only ever discuss politics and religion because there's actually nothing else to discuss.
Right. Which is a great quote. And I think that it impacts so many other areas of life, but we try to negate it. We try to run away from it. And so why did you choose to run towards it?
I don't even have a good answer for that. This is, you know how when you're good at something, it feels easy for you. And then you just assume that your experience is normative. And so this is how politics works for me. And it's hard to say it without sounding really cocky, but it sort of fits. And I see how the play works together. And other people don't see it the same way, but I understand that lots of people they're good in the domains that they live in too.
Yeah. It's interesting because I remember this was a few weeks ago. You and I both attended an economic partnership meeting. And it was interesting hearing the conversation that was going on in the room about the future of Alberta and some of the projects that they had on the go. And the entire day you hadn't said anything and you stopped the meeting. And I forget exactly the wording that you used, but you brought up one idea and it was so strategic. And to me, it showed you that you were gathering information the entire time and knew exactly what needed to be said and how to translate it in a really effective way, which I think goes very well of you saying of, this is the natural gift setting that I've been given. How do I use it for good? And I think that was a great example of that.
Yeah, that's a good example. It's a funny moment because there we had high-priced consultants that are getting paid serious money to do this presentation, and they're getting lost in the technical and the details of the whole thing, and they didn't see the one piece. They didn't see the big vision of what we're actually trying to do, which in that case, it's actually one of the projects I'm really excited about for the future of what Alberta looks like. And it's a highway connection that will connect Rocky Mountain House to Saskatchewan River Crossing to just past Golden, BC. And so essentially a second pass through the Rocky Mountains.
Yes, which I think has a huge impact on tourism, but then also just the manufacturing of how we can ship goods from one side to the other and what that will end up happening for businesses all across Alberta.
And the bigger play here is that the national parks are really special. Mm-hmm. My family was just in skiing in Banff yesterday. And wouldn't it be great if we could get rid of all the semi-traffic in the national parks? Yes. And here we could just direct all the semi-traffic to go through this new spot. So all the traffic from the Port of Vancouver has to come through Red Deer. And then Red Deer becomes the most strategic city in Western Canada. And all we have to do is build this highway. It was driving me nuts. People couldn't see this and were getting, will there be traffic and who will this benefit? Like, no, draw the thing, make the lines, away we go. So this is in terms of this bigger vision. I'm only trying to redraw the map of Western Canada.
Right. And so going back, when you first decided to run for city council, what did that decision look like as a household? Because I'm assuming it's not just you making that decision. You're including your family in that.
Yeah, it's something we talked about for a long time. This isn't something we just did on a whim. And certainly something that I had worked really hard to prepare myself for and through other jobs and understanding. And before I ran, I was actually writing for an organization called Common Sense Red Deer. And so I was actually reading every council agenda and summarizing it and sending out a weekly email saying, this is what we're doing. And so to have the preparedness of I actually know what's going on at City Hall. I actually understand how these things fit together and know the politics instead of the two or three things that the media picks up.
Yeah. People like to focus on the buzzwords and they don't see all the underlying issues that might be taking place, as well as the solutions that might be there that are just under our noses.
Yeah. And I don't mean to denigrate the media at all. I think one of the things we miss is that politics is a long conversation about a place. And if you weren't in that conversation, you just don't know.
Right.
Even people regularly ask, well, why aren't we building a second hospital? Why are we building the one we're building now? I'm like, well, 15 years ago, they decided that we were going to expand the one we have. Why? I don't know. I wasn't in that conversation.
So, how do people that don't have a desire to move into politics, but they want to be informed citizens, how do they actually get information in a meaningful way so they can make decisions?
Hmm. I think the political people are actually more accessible than you think. And that I know everyone on my council is certainly happy to meet with people regularly and that side of it. But also, but there's also being involved in the city and understanding that you can make a difference in your own city as well. And I think we have lots of underutilized resources in community, like even community associations. Every community has a little association that's probably run by three little old ladies to try to keep the place afloat. And knowing your neighbors makes a huge difference in how the city functions together as well. And we miss this piece, and we're too busy to worry about all these things oftentimes.
Yeah. I think for myself, because I live just outside of Red Deer, and I have no desire to be a politician, move into that realm whatsoever, but I knew that I wanted to be more informed. And so I signed up to be on the Municipal Planning Commission just to understand what were the businesses that are coming in, what's some of the laws that are going to be changed, and how can that benefit us as a whole. The byproduct of that is I found out that we were passing a motion that was going to change some Airbnb laws. And so I came home and I told my wife, I'm like, I think that we should look at Airbnbs in this area. And it ended up being one of the best business decisions that we made. And that was being an involved citizen. And I think that's sometimes what people miss is, yes, you get the opportunity to serve others, to serve your community, but the insights that you're going to gain are often probably going to help you as an individual to move life forward.
And I actually think Red Deer's at a really interesting piece right now, that there's a lot of people that have been doing a lot of the committees and the board works and being essentially the voice for the city. And it's the same group of maybe 100 or 200 people. And now we're starting to see some young leaders rise up in town and actually fill some of those spots. And so it's not the same voices every time. And some new business owners that are sort of taking some of that leadership as Red Deer is moving into an identity conversation. We have to grow out of a city that thinks like a small town.
Yes.
And move past this. Imposter syndrome is too strong, but there's a piece of that we actually need to figure out what we are as a city and what we want to be.
That's really good. When I was looking up some information, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe you're the only city councillor in Red Deer that has ever won in a by-election.
Yes.
Which is a pretty huge historical moment. What did the momentum look like to build that? Of how do you actually have those conversations with people, get the trust, and also prove your leadership in maybe a 5-minute conversation?
So I'm the only city councillor to ever win a by-election, which is a piece of it too. But the by-election was, it's harder to win a by-election than a general election because there's only one spot. And Red Deer has a really not goofy, but interesting way to do their general election, that you show up and you can vote for one mayor and 8 councillors. And so incumbents actually rarely lose because there's a lot of name recognition involved. And if you have 8 votes, like, oh yeah, I met that guy. Oh yeah, he shook my hand one time. And I don't mean to denigrate the voting process, but that's generally how it works. And that's how the math plays it out. And so the by-election is much more difficult. And so it was actually a really challenging time of because there actually wasn't a big issue in community in Red Deer, that things were fine. And that's always been one of Red Deer's challenges. We're sort of middling. We're sort of just okay, but not excellent, not terrible, sort of not leading the pack, not lagging. And I joked at the time that Edmonton had a bylaw that you couldn't have paper bags for your teen burger. You can win a by-election on just saying, we're going to fight that, and you better be able to have a paper bag when you go to A&W. But we didn't have one of those. We actually had a whole bunch of issues come up after the by-election that were challenging, and we can talk through too. And it was a challenge just to, let people know it had happened, or it was happening. But then you end up being the bearer of bad news, because what happened was Michael Daw, who's one of Red Deer's beloved citizens, was the city historian. Everybody knew his name. He had passed away. And so I ended up knocking on people's door, letting people know that there's a by-election. They say, oh, why is there a by-election? Oh, someone you really liked has passed away. But now be excited about me, which was a difficult transition. And that's the conversations we ended up having a lot of the time. And so we worked incredibly hard for that. And you have to rally volunteers, and you have to raise money for all that too. And then we got 9% turnout, which the city is not dialed in. The city is not really focused on this right now. Like I said, there wasn't a big issue in community. And so that was, but still incredible to win, and brought a team together, and still deep friends made out of that too. And This is things people don't know about politics, that if you can be involved in a political campaign, you will make friends.
Yes.
This is the crucible of like tried through this big mission that you can do, and incredible opportunities and all of that.
Yeah. I think that's oftentimes what you have, that almost brothers in arms feel of you're going to forward on the same mission. You brought up an interesting point about having to be the bearer of bad news of someone passing away, and then trying to also have that conversation of, this is why you should vote for me. And I think that's a skill set that most people don't have, is difficult conversations. What did you do to practice so that way you can have that difficult conversation? And how can other people at home take that skill set of, how do I have a difficult conversation?
Interesting about practice, that the best way to practice is to go do it.
Mm.
This is knocking on doors and see how it goes. And I'm actually not extroverted by nature. I don't like disturbing people to, hey, disturb you, do this thing, care about politics right now when you were just watching TV. And so you have to line it up and like, well, we're just going to try again, shake it off and go to the next door. And you get better by the doing. And especially on that. I'm not a salesman by nature either. And a lot of what I'm talking about in campaigns is civic pride. And my tagline is next simple thing, which, what's the next simple thing we can do to make this place better? And if you're not in the right frame of mind, or people often want government just to solve all their problems and to make it work and do everything better. But actually, no, we should do, if you do things incrementally, that's actually how they change. But that doesn't sell nearly as well as deep promises to fix everything and just solve the problems. And so there's a challenge of, I'm also not willing to oversell what I'm going to be able to do. So willing to have the conversation, man, if someone's dialed in on issues, I'm all in to talk about it. But I'm trying to talk about things that will actually make a difference when people want you to solve the whole problem.
Most people start with motivation. Very few start with a system. Last year, I didn't guess my way through goals. I used the same framework I'm sharing with you today. Here's what it helped make possible. It increased our net worth. We bought 4 properties, 2 on the same day, spent more intentional time with family and friends, received 2 promotions, and took a dream vacation. This wasn't hustle. It wasn't willpower. It was clarity, structure, and alignment. That's why I created the ultimate goal setting framework. If you're tired of setting goals that sound good, then disappear, this is for you. Download it for free at thecurrencyofhappiness.com and start pursuing goals in a meaningful way. And you had also made mention of the fact that after you got elected, that's when issues started to come in. And what were some of those issues that you saw, and how did you navigate them?
So it's also, the bigger challenge was coming in to a group, a city council that essentially 8 people that have battled together for 2.5 years and worked together and know each other very well. And I'm coming in and I had known them all individually and sort of in different roles, and sort of they know who I was, but also the campaign happens and things are said and lies are said about you in campaigns. Fun fact, not everything you read on the internet is true. And so trying to work with these people, and suddenly now I'm voting right with them. And so finding that way and building that trust, and trusting both ways, them trusting me and me trusting them as well. And to the council's credit, I was actually welcomed in very well. And the mayor at the time told me, like, Chad, you actually have to talk more, which is interesting because I'm not long-winded by nature. And if I talk more, then the meeting goes longer. And so, okay, hear my voice and find the voice and all that and push things in the direction that you want them to go. Right. And so another really important piece of politics is this is about influence, not control. And people so often miss that. It's like, oh, the political people, they just do this and they control everything. It's like, no, I'm actually just trying to move the needle and push the influence and find out ways you can have more influence. And
so what is the difference between influence and control?
So you actually, like, city council actually can't. So as one member of city council, I can't direct staff to go do this. Make sure you plow my street first. I have influence as one member of city council. We can influence the snow clearing policy, how this works and how much we're going to spend and what the triggers are to do a full city plow. But I can't make them plow my street first.
Right. And so you're not controlling what that will look like, but you're influencing the policies at play.
Yeah. But also being okay with that too. And some people come in to politics and I'm going to change everything. We're going to fix it. I'm like, well, and this isn't to denigrate all this, but this is the process. And you have a whole committee that's your one vote on a council of 9.
Right.
And to adjust expectations as well for what you can do so you can sleep at night too. Because we've had a bunch of votes in council where I was on the other side and I didn't get my way. And you have to like, well, that's how this is.
And how do you wrestle with that when you feel like, hey, what we're proposing, I actually don't agree with this, or you wanted something to happen and it didn't happen? How do you actually settle that with them? Because I think for most people, that would be something that eats away at them.
Yeah. So the good example of that is in 24, we did a 10% tax increase in Red Deer. And for most people who don't watch city council, budget week is the big week in council. You spend full days, full 8 to 10 hour board meeting days of fighting through every line on the budget. And what had happened is previously the council had used up all the reserves. So there's nothing in the savings account, and costs go up, and union costs go up, and a bunch of things like that. And it's just sort of like, this is where we ended up after we fought through everything, was a 10% tax increase, which, knowing that there's people struggling, is just absolutely made me sick to my stomach. And we fought through as much as we could. And in the end, I voted against it too. And you just sort of have to let it go. And it's like, not that it's not a problem and not that it doesn't still affect people, but knowing you did absolutely the best you could, you didn't miss a moment in council to push this. And sometimes that's just where it ends up.
Right.
And that sounds weak for what political people say. And we fight this and we do. It's like, sometimes you have to trust the wisdom of your colleagues in the situation that you're set up and know that you're playing the long game on all this too.
Yeah. And I think the unfortunate part is people only hear the decision.
Mm-hmm.
They don't hear the behind the scenes of what led to the decision or who chose which side of things. And so my assumption is that when the citizens of a city hear, hey, there's going to be a tax increase, you become the bad guy.
Right.
And so how do you wrestle with that as well, of knowing who you are, what you stand for, but the perception that others might have of you?
Yeah, it is an interesting piece that you all get labeled to too. And some people are really process orientated, and I'm actually not. I'm not a process guy. I'm a results person too. I'm like, did we do the good thing? And it's taken probably the last year and a half now plus that I've been on council to learn you got to learn the process, which is learning the game. And I don't mean game in a funny way, but like, this life is a game and you have to see this as a game, and that's what we're doing here together. And so this process matters a ton.
Mm.
And the better you understand the process and to see the long part of it, the easier it is. But it is a challenge too. And like I said, not everything you see on the internet is true. And to be able to do that, and you actually need thick skin to do this, which is strange.
Yeah.
So there's seasons where my wife deletes Facebook because it's just too much. And so I don't have a good answer for you for how I do it either, because it's not like saying that, oh, those comments don't affect me. And I'm actually quite those comments do affect you. And when you get tagged into terrible stuff, and it's like, oh, well, this is part of the job, but I also know I'm doing important work and I am making a difference. And that's really what motivates me too, is you can tangibly see the difference that you're making when you do this job.
Yeah. And I think that's a really humanizing thing to hear, that your wife even has to delete Facebook at times, and people forget about the family that's behind the person making some of those decisions. And so for yourself, when it comes to your family impact, what do you do to safeguard some of those?
It's interesting because the way it works is it's really intense seasons and then really quiet seasons. And so for higher level in politics, there's always people mad about the MLA or about the prime minister. Like that sort of is a constant piece. But for city council, a lot of it is really focused around campaign, and then budget season is a little bit. And then every once in a while, something will flare up in community. Maybe when people get their tax notices, or we'll discuss a homeless shelter location, I have no doubt, in the future, or maybe we already have by the time this is released. But so that'll flare up then, but then it actually goes quiet a lot of the time too.
Right.
And so to answer your question the best way, knowing when the seasons are coming, when it's going to be intense, and sort of mentally preparing for that and sort of gearing up for it, and then knowing that it actually goes quiet.
Right. Because you also have young kids. Because how old's your oldest?
11.
11. And so does your children start to see the impact of those heavier seasons?
Oh, it's funny, actually. My kids love door knocking with me. That they actually enjoy the campaign so much more than I do, and they're just here for it. And so, they don't see a lot of that. My oldest kids are homeschooled as well, and so they don't see a lot of that piece of it. And news isn't perfect in Red Deer too, and that it's actually pretty hard to get good information. So,
right,
my family is reasonably protected from all that too. And there's people like that I'm a city councillor too. It's like, oh wow, so there's an element of that is actually a positive.
Yes. And that is nice to be able to have those positive moments where your children can look up and see the important work that you're doing.
I mean, my 4-year-old who says when he grows up, he wants to be a dad, not a silly counselor,
Right.
which is humanizing as well. He would just rather me home all the time anyway.
Yeah, it's funny how 4-year-olds can just pinpoint exactly what needs to be said in those moments. Because you have 5 children.
Yeah.
And you also have been doing fostering for quite a while. And how long ago was it that you adopted the 2 children?
April of last year.
April of last year. So what was the decision to start the fostering process? Because I know a lot of people, they have this idea of it, but then they hear some of the horror stories. What made you decide to, hey, we want to open up our home for other people?
So the answer I like to give is it's actually the same reason I do politics. That if good people don't do this, you're left with bad or mediocre people doing this. And so the need is incredible for foster care. And it's hard work. Harder than politics, harder than everything else. And like parenting still remains the hardest thing that I do, which you get the least accolades for being a good parent.
Right.
Which isn't, maybe we probably need to fix that as well in society. And so for us, my wife it's been on her heart to take care of foster kids. And that's sort of been something she's wanted to do for a long time. And so there was a long conversation around that too and wanting to do it. And man, you want to talk about governments being difficult to work with. It's just the foster care system. And so, I mean, I'm a little bit biased that I think we're good people. And it took us 11 months to get certified as a foster home.
Wow. It's a long process. And so for those that are on the fence of, hey, I thought about fostering, but I'm not too sure if it's the right fit, what would you encourage them with?
Come have a conversation with a foster parent. Not everyone should be a foster parent. Not everyone should be in politics. This is obvious, but we actually need people to do this. And there's good homes and there's kids to take care of that are really beat up and broken. And these are the orphans in our society.
And so you then made the transition from fostering to adopting. What did that look like?
So we'd been fostering for 8 years before, and we'd had 6 different kids go through our home. And just like when you have a baby, it's actually really disruptive to add a child to your family. And then you can imagine it's just as disruptive to remove that child from your family. And the foster kids that we'd had previous, some of them went back to their biological mother, which is great. It's actually how the system is supposed to work, that the mother sort of got better and was ready to be a mom again, but it's still gut-wrenchingly hard for our family and for our kids. Like, oh, okay, we send these kids in, and we had, I think it's kids we'd had for 18 months when they were 1 and 3, and then they'd obviously grown in that 18 months, but then to give them back to the mom and never hear from them again. So send them into the void and hope they're doing well. Right. And so that piece is really hard. And so the kids that we had that we eventually adopted, it's a little bit technical. It's private guardianship, not adoption, but it's easier to just explain it as adoption. And so we'd had them for 2.5 years, and actually done brain surgery with one of them and gone through the horrors of all of that. And then their mom and dad aren't in the picture at all. And so, but it's still a long process to go through that, and a whole nother home study, and a whole nother making sure that we're good people and good for this, and then getting a court date and going before a judge. And yeah.
Yeah, it's a long process. And what has been the reward on the other side?
It's actually better than I thought it would be. So when you're fostering, you have a social worker that shows up at your house a lot. And even little things like to go to Saskatoon, where my parents are from, we needed a letter from the social worker because we're leaving the province of Alberta. And so it actually just lowered the temperature in our house so much. And knowing that these are our kids, and if we want to send them to school or which school, we are the ones making that decision. And so it's actually been incredible.
I think it's interesting because you're serving in 2 elements. You're serving in the public light, where people see the big decisions being made, whether they agree, disagree, but then you're also serving behind the scenes of bringing people into your house, having maybe some difficult conversations with your family about, hey, this person is now going to be leaving our family and going back to their biological parents, or the choice to adopt and what that looks as a whole. How do you have those conversations with your family so that way everyone's on board and they're part of the decision making?
So our kids are still little, remember. And so, but we also want our kids to know that we're a family that does hard things, and we're a family that can make a difference in the world. And that this life isn't about being easy and comfortable and having everything fine and sorted, that we are called to make a difference in the city, and this is how we do it. And letting our kids see that, and they get to be part of this too. And so they get to grow up in that environment where it's expected that you'd be giving back to your community. It's expected that you would be trying to make the world better around you.
And that's very polar to what society teaches us now.
Mm-hmm.
I think society, we're looking for comfort. We're looking for the easy thing. And I like that you said you do hard things. For us, we always say to our kids, Roshas, do hard things. So no matter what the decision is, we're going to do the hard thing, knowing that it's likely going to be the right thing. How do people, whether they're parents, whether they're citizens, how do they choose the hard thing over comfort?
I think that goes back to, it's a quote that I'm sure it's just a meme, that you suffer now or you suffer later. That we actually don't get through this without suffering, and anything that's worth doing is going to be brutally hard. And so this is a choice to live this way. And I think if you just pursue comfort, it will come back to haunt you.
Yeah, that's very good. And I know another hard thing that you did was write a book. Welcome to Monday. So where did you get the inspiration to write a book, and why did you want to write a book?
So this comes from being a pastor, and that I genuinely care about. The book is written for, it's a men's devotional. And so genuinely caring about a bunch of men's spiritual life. And so what ended up happening is just have thoughts and knowing that. So each devotional starts out with, welcome to Monday, our battle against the world, the flesh, and the devil continues. And so knowing that it's relatively easy to be a Christian on Sunday morning when sort of everyone's together, but then Monday, you're back into the world and back into. And so I wrote this is a text out devotional that I would write. Here's welcome to Monday, and here's 2 paragraphs, things to think about this week. And so I'd been doing that for a couple of years. I had 20 guys that I would just bomb it out to, old friends, guys at church. And then eventually I had 50 of them. And I found a publisher who was willing to take me on. And we torqued it up. And now it's 52 devotionals with a verse and an application. And it's actually pretty good.
Yeah, that's incredible. I love the start of our battle because for so many different men, specifically for this book, there's different battles that they have, whether it's the battles at home, the battles at work, the battles in ministry, the battles in civil service, whatever it might be. And so I love how you incorporated that we're choosing to battle, knowing that it's a battle for good.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of them too, it's about apathy and about distraction too. That we live in a world that's really designed to make sure that you are distracted, and satiated is the technical word for you're satisfied in everything. And if you're not fighting, you're losing.
Yeah, that's so good. I like to do a little bit of a rapid round. And so I know that you had brought a quote with you. And so I'm curious, what is the quote that brings direction to your life that you come back to from time to time?
So this is the quote that's on my wall. This is what inspired my municipal runs. And so it's G.K. Chesterton from Orthodoxy, and it's slightly contextualized to red deer. So, if men loved red deer as much as mothers love children arbitrarily because it is theirs, red deer in a year or two might be fairer than Florence. Some readers will say that this is a mere fantasy, and I answer, this is the actual history of mankind. This, as a fact, is how cities did grow great. Go back to the darkest roots of civilization, and you will find them knotted around some sacred stone or encircling some sacred well. People first paid honor to a spot and afterwards gained glory for it. Men did not love Rome because she was great. She was great because they had loved her.
And so coming back to that love of our city, I think that's so powerful. Chad, what's a book that you come back to that's really motivated you in your life?
Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. It's a great motivator. It's part of the inspiration for the book as well. And that knowing how all those things fit together. And I love the satire and pieces of all that too.
Yes. And then lastly, and I think that you want to read a portion of the book, what does happiness look to you, Chad?
So the book's actually funny because they actually got better as I kept writing them. And so I actually think the devotionals at the back end of the book are better than the ones at the front end of the book. And so if you read it, it's interesting. A number of my friends that aren't from my Christian world read it. And the second devotional actually talks about how Satan hates you and has a terrible plan for your life. Which is not the way I talk in city council, not the way I talk in civic life, but that's in the book.
Yeah. But who doesn't like a nice motivation on a Monday?
Exactly. So this actually ties a whole bunch of the things we've talked about together too. So devotion number 52, the last one in the book, it's called Choose Joy. Welcome to Monday. Our battle against the world, the flesh, and the devil continues. One of the most meaningful funerals I've ever attended was for a woman in her 30s who was a foster parent. Her story was heartbreaking. Cancer, life cut short, leaving behind a husband and kids who needed her. Yet, at her funeral, everyone was giving a picture with two simple but powerful words: choose joy. She chose joy, even in the midst of great pain, impending loss, and ultimately death. We still have that picture. It's a reminder that joy isn't something that happens to us. It's something that we choose. Satan hates joy. He hates laughter. He hates it when our hearts are heavy, weighed down with fear, anxiety, and bitterness. Some of the greatest joys of life come from pure, unfiltered laughter of little kids. And as we grow older, the weight of the world tries to smother that childlike delight. The enemy would love nothing more than for us to believe that joy is reserved for people with easy lives. But we can rejoice in the goodness of God, even when life is unsettled and full of problems. Can joy become a spiritual discipline, something deeper than a fleeting emotion, something beyond just a cognitive exercise of counting our blessings? True joy isn't the same as gratitude. It's not merely listing what is good. It's experiencing a powerful, heart-level delight in God, even when life is hard. This week, make an intentional choice to rejoice, not because life is easy, but because God is good. Grace be with you. We have much darkness to illuminate.
Thank you for sharing that. So happiness to you is a choice.
Yeah.
Choice to follow God, choice to make those hard decisions. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chad.
You bet. This is awesome. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, Chad, for sharing the importance of local government, your heart to serve, and how we can all love the places we are in a little bit better. Can you do me a favor? Can you hit subscribe wherever you're listening to podcasts from? Thank you.